Continuing the journey.
Just continuing the journey. I love it. Well, awesome. So everyone that's going to be watching this here, your name is Marek.
Correct.
Right?
Yep, Marek Bauner.
I love it. Awesome. So Marek, we've known each other for about a little over a year now?
Yeah, about a year now. You were the very first lender that reached out to me when I got licensed. So yeah, it's been about a year now.
I think we met through Nick, right? Nick had connected us.
Yeah, I think he did actually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because he obviously works the same brokerage as you.
Correct.
And all that stuff. Cool. So awesome. Well, for everyone, this is going to go on my socials and yours too, right? So for people who don't know, who are you? What do you do?
My name's Marek Bauner. I'm local. I'm a realtor. I live in Crown Point. Actually, just purchased my first place myself recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's that's a whole new journey, I will say.
Yeah.
It feels a lot better, helping people buy their own homes with now actually having experience doing it myself. It felt maybe a little hypocritical originally, but I will say that, I feel like I understand the process more now that I've actually done it myself. So
absolutely.
Been beneficial so far. So
yeah, well, and even just for that experience too, right? Like I'd been in the business for a while before I purchased my first place. And after going through that process myself, I was like, oh my God, like there's so much more to this than I thought there was, even though I do this every single day. I will
say, like, previously I may have been, a little blinded by some of the emotions that my clients, kind of drop on me sometimes.
Yep.
And now I do really understand the whole ins and outs of the, the emotional roller coaster of what purchasing a place can be.
Absolutely.
So it's helped me, maybe on a more emotional level connection with my clients rather than just everything being so business oriented.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. 1,000% for sure. So, Marek, tell us how you got into real estate. How'd that happen for you?
Well, I will say probably about a year and a half ago is when I really started. But I guess, if you backtrack a little bit, I originally out of high school, I went to college in Tennessee to, pursue baseball. I played baseball there. Was intending on being a teacher.
Okay.
Ended up going through a shoulder surgery. Ended up transferring to a junior college, which is in Illinois or so, Kankakee. And then from there, got my associate's degree. And pretty much after baseball had finished up, and I decided I couldn't continue with that anymore. I just wasn't sure if teaching was the route that I wanted.
Right.
So I started looking into some other things that maybe didn't need 4-year degrees, just because I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue with college anymore now that it's no longer being paid for.
Right.
So,
understandable.
And one of the biggest things that made me really think about real estate was the fact of, taking out student loans to continue on college and be a teacher. I was to the point where I'm like, I want to just make money. Like I want to grind. I want to be able to. I like the idea of real estate. There not being a ceiling for me.
Right, of course.
I'm not capped off by a salary necessarily. It's,
sure.
You kind of get out what you put in type of thing. And,
Absolutely.
Just obviously being involved in sports my whole life, that was such a mentality. So that's how I look at real estate, honestly, is, the more it's not always the case because you could work as hard as you can and then nothing happened for you.
True.
But at the same token, it really is, the amount of time and effort and put in, typically you get that in return. And that's really what led me to real estate, because it's something that, like I said, I feel like there's no ceiling as to how successful you can be.
Right, of course, yeah. And how successful you can be measured into, obviously, the amount of families that you help, right?
Correct.
So, the harder that you work at what you do and perfecting your craft, the more people you can service, which obviously does get you paid, but also at the end of the day gives them the benefit of home ownership as well.
And I will say honestly, at first it was, all about, as far as from a financial aspect, I'm like, oh, I can make good money doing this. But then once I got my first deal done, it's like, it's so much more than the money.
Absolutely.
It really, especially with first time home buyers, it's like such a good feeling as far as, seeing someone settle down and, plant some roots as far as, starting their life. And it's really cool to be a part of that, even being such a, small part of it, I guess you could say.
Right.
But it's just nice to be able to help, and see people achieve things that they may have not thought that they would be able to do at some point.
Yeah. Oh,
so
absolutely.
it's very rewarding.
Absolutely. Very, very rewarding for sure. No, that's awesome. So you got into real estate, because of a decision that you made that you didn't want to go through the normal process of life of getting a college degree, being in student loan debt, going to work a job that you probably wouldn't be in love with, right?
Mhm.
It's finding that passion that you have for helping other people in a way that, obviously pays the bills monetarily,
Sure.
right? And then also, like, you can start doing that now. You don't
Mhm.
have to wait. Like, that's
That was probably the biggest thing, is
Yeah.
because everything was always so centered about sports and school, but once the sports part kind of ceased, um, it was like, well, now I don't want to just go to school and do nothing. I want to work.
right.
And that's just pretty much what led me to real estate. I decided, I want to get to work, and I want to get to work now, and a couple months of schooling and your license.
Yeah.
So that's really what led me to real estate, honestly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's honestly that kind of relatable there too, because that's my thing. I was like, okay, well, I tore my ACL, so I wasn't going to go to the military. That's
Right.
part of my story. And I was like, well, I can go to school and I can, become like, I was thinking about doing something in the medical field, right? And I was like, but that's a lot of work and I have to wait. I'd rather
Mhm.
just whatever I want to do and what I'm passionate about, I want to start doing it right now.
Right. Yeah.
I was impatient.
Even though in a way, it's not like I was off track as far as schooling, but it's just in my
Right.
mind, it was like I have so much that I could take advantage of these 2 years.
Right.
Not that I compare myself to my peers necessarily, but it's like their next 2 years are going to be in school.
Right.
I want those 2 years for me to be me building a business,
Yeah.
making as much as possible and helping,
Right.
these families. And it was something that really intrigued me, and I'm really glad I made that decision.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, 100%. So cool. I love it. What are some of the challenges you've faced in your career so far?
I mean, I will say, with only being in the business a year, I'm sure there's plenty more to come.
Right.
But I will say some of the things that have been challenging for sure is, I will say, one of the very first things that I was worried about is being an agent is being young.
Sure.
I mean, I just turned 23 not too long ago. Homeowners or people looking to buy houses. I had the fear of them not necessarily trusting me being
Right.
young, and like I was saying, I had never done it myself, so it felt a little hypocritical.
Right.
But I've learned to overcome that just through the basis of knowing all the information possible.
Right.
Being some type of outlet to them, giving them all the correct info and trying to be on top of everything. So I build up that trust rather than someone who may be a little older. They might off the bat, trust them more just based off age.
Right. No, exactly. And I like that about you too. So that's one of the things that, that I've noticed, I picked up on, and I appreciate about who you are as a real estate agent, right? You're very curious. And I find that super interesting because not many people are. I was just talking about this with David, who was in here before. And there's so many people in our business that kind of just passively do it, right? They don't actively pursue knowledge, right? And you're one of those people where, it was kind of a crutch for you, or what you felt like, right? Coming into it being so young that you felt like you had to overcompensate probably.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's a very saturated market we're in. I mean, there's a million real estate companies. There's a million real estate agents. You have to do something that's going to set yourself apart,
Right.
or you're not going to make it.
Oh, yeah.
And one of those factors, besides just, how busy and how many, people are actually in this business, was, one of the things I was worried about, obviously, was also being young. So that, on top of the fact that everyone else has been doing it a while, it's like I feel like I have to double, or overcompensate, I should say, for that by, learning as much and asking as many questions. And, obviously, people say, like, the key to getting good at something is practicing and learning and just more knowledge, and that's the only way I feel like I was gonna get to the point to where I can be successful.
Right, of course. Well, and going back to that point too, like, you felt like you had to probably overcompensate with the amount of experience or value you brought to the client because of your age, right? And while that, everyone has, insecurities in themselves or in their business, right? I'm not saying that you have an insecurity there, but what I'm saying is that you felt like that would be an issue, right? And so that led you to overcompensate in that area, being as curious as possible. And now, because of that, we'll just call it self-doubt, right? Potentially, you are now 10 times the realtor that you could have been if you had never had that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, because it's only beneficial for me to learn more things and ask more questions and, talk to people. And that's one of the biggest things, is talking to people and trusting people who have been doing it longer than you,
Right.
and not necessarily looking towards them as competition,
Mm-hmm.
is more like, how can I learn from some of these people? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. You can always learn something from somebody, even if they are your competition,
Mhm.
right? Like directly, you can always learn something from some interaction, right?
Right.
Even if it's maybe to not be in that interaction anymore, right? So, but yeah, no, I love that. And again, too, and that's something that I definitely struggled with when I started, because when I started, I was 19 in the business. Well, I was like a month before my 19th birthday, but that was definitely a thing that I struggled with too, where I was like, okay, everyone's going to see me as this kid, so I got to wear a suit every single day, right? And I'm wearing a suit every single day. Now I have to, like, now that I'm walking the walk or like looking the part, I have to be able to actually speak congruently and know what they're asking, right?
Right.
I'll never forget, like, one of the first loan applications I ever took, someone sent me their W-2s, and I was like, oh yeah, they don't qualify. They only make $10,000 a year. Well, I missed a zero. They made $100,000 a year. So
That's a major difference.
it was pretty awesome. They eventually got approved and closed with me, so that was great. And they're a 2-time pass client, so that's awesome. Shout out to them. But yeah, so I think that a lot of that too, the biggest challenges that you've had and that you've overcame, the more like struggle, right? The bigger the struggle, the better that you're going to be coming out of that, right? And I definitely see that as, like, you're going through, obviously you're just over a year in, there's still plenty of different hard lessons you're going to have to learn in this business, right? But I can see, like, what you're going to be 10 years from now. I can already see that now being molded and being shaped, right? So the only advice I could give you is from someone who's been in the business a couple extra years is there's going to be hard times, right? Take it on the chin, right? Get through it. Every single time you face adversity, just think about, like, okay, like, I'm becoming stronger because of this, right? It's the next time I have to make an uncomfortable call, it's going to hurt less, right? Things like that. So love that for you. Tell me, like, if, what's your target demographic when it comes to real estate clients? Who do you work with the most right now?
I will say I probably definitely, as far as, type of clients, it's typically first-time home buyers.
Okay.
And like I was saying earlier, it has made it easier since doing it myself, because I understand their questions, I understand their concerns, and I will say one of the things that has really helped me out as far as helping these first-time home buyers has been my brokerage, Listing Leaders Northwest. They offer tons of classes, purchase agreements, inspection response, like those type of classes are what allowed me to learn the whole process of a real estate deal, and allows me to portray that to those first-time home buyers in a very easy way.
Right.
Maybe with not all the extra language that we use in real estate,
right, of course,
but kind of break it down to them so they understand, oh, it may not be as intimidating as it sounds.
Right. Oh, of course. And there's a lot of great things about that too, right? So you're getting a ton of training from your brokerage, which is awesome. Most brokerages don't do a lot of training, right? So the fact that your brokerage it's great, right? It means they care about their agents, they care about the clients that you're working with, and things of that nature. But you mentioned something there too, like, a lot of times what I see agents do, and lenders as well, with communication specifically to the client, it's all in the terms that we understand, right? As professionals that have been in this for at least 1+ years, right? Or have closed a couple of deals, right? Most of our clients, especially first-time homebuyers, which is the majority of the clients we both work with, they have no idea what any of that means, right? They don't know what a CTC is. They don't know what funds to close are. They don't know what, cash to close is, or closing costs, or, APR, or anything like that, right?
I'll say at the beginning, I was that agent
Of
that
course.
would just say,
We all were.
It's the actual legal real estate term of it is what I would use, because I didn't necessarily fully understand it myself to be able to break it down in a simpler way for them.
Absolutely. Definitely have been there. And I think that, like, a lot of that too, the fact that you've been able to grow out of that, right? And you've been able to help with, explaining it a little bit easier to your clients, that obviously shows more growth too, right? Because 90% of what we do is strictly communication. Like, making sure everyone
pretty
knows
good point.
what the heck is going on, right? Cool. So you work with a lot of first-time home buyers, right? Those are people that that's your target, or not necessarily your target that you only work with those people, because you work with other types of clients too, obviously. but a majority of the people you end up working with are the first-time home buyers, right?
Typically.
So what are some of the biggest questions or concerns that you've seen first-time home buyers bring up that you've addressed before with a lot of your clients that maybe somebody that's watching that might have that same question?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, probably the two biggest things that I come across with first-time home buyers are earnest money and inspections.
Okay, perfect. So what are those?
So the earnest money, we'll start with the earnest
Yeah.
money. So, you like a property, you put an offer in on it and it gets accepted. Typically within a few days after acceptance, you'll turn in earnest money, which is basically another word for it is it's like a good faith payment saying, I'm committed to this deal.
Right, it's like a deposit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Typically around like 1% to 2% of the purchase price or so, something around there.
Okay.
The thing is, with the inspection, obviously depending on what type of sale, if it's as is or a typical sale, they have so many questions about the inspection. And if the inspection goes wrong, do they get their earnest money back? I've just dealt with that recently with an as-is deal. We ended up mutually releasing from the deal, but there were some difficulties with the earnest money and some situations like that. But we were able to work it through, thankfully.
Well, and also too, for somebody who doesn't know what an as-is deal is, right? So what would that be?
So an as-is deal is basically, the sellers are saying, hey, we're not willing to make any repairs on this property, and typically if they're not willing to make repairs, they're typically not willing to give credits either.
Right.
So those can be tougher, I will say. They're
Right.
definitely tougher to navigate, especially if you're a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
Because in your mind, it's, oh, well, this is wrong. Let's just ask them to fix it.
Right.
But as we know, that's not
always,
not how it works.
Not always how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so and a lot of times too with as-is deals, right? Because I deal with some of those too with my clients. There's typically something that's wrong with the property that the sellers know about. They're just not willing to fix it, right?
Right.
And it just depends on what is wrong with the property if you want to proceed as a client or not. Because there are some issues with properties that are not that big of a deal.
Sure.
It might be expensive, and it might be relatively expensive, right? And it might be something you want to fix later on, but it might not be like dire to that home performing.
Sure.
Really good example of this was when I bought my first condo. The hot water heater was like at the end of its life, right? It had like maybe a year left on it. And so, or I think it was like actually past like the manufacturer like estimated life of this hot water heater, right? So I asked the sellers, hey, can I get a new one? And they're like, no, like we're not going to go buy you a new water heater, right? So then I was like, all right, cool. Can I get some money like to help with replacing that later on, right? Lower my cost of coming into this property. So then I have money set aside for the water heater when it goes out. They're like, nah, we ain't gonna do that either, right? And so I was like, okay, well, whatever, right? So to me, it was still worth it because the water heater was still working at the time.
Sure.
And it was.
But from a buyer's perspective, it's worth a shot to ask.
Oh, of course, yeah. You never, you'll never get what you don't ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But back to what you were saying though, as is, there are certain things that can make it, or I guess you could say, certain things that can be fixed. Mm-hmm. With there being, major defects or, health and safety type of things.
Right.
Those are things that can be addressed.
Even and with an as-is contract, you can still,
you can still address some issues.
Health and safety issues for sure. Things like the roof, things like asbestos, stuff like that, right? Perfect. Cool. So what would you say is like the biggest mistake you've seen a first-time homebuyer make in your career?
I would honestly say, offering on a house that they didn't 100% feel was like home to them.
Okay.
I've seen it happen to where, it checks the boxes as far as what they're looking for specs wise.
Sure.
But may not have that feel of like, oh my goodness, this is the one, it's home. Like they might just think, oh, well, we've been looking for a little while now. It fits what we're looking for. We don't love it, but we like it.
Sure.
Which in some cases is okay.
Right.
But if a first-time home buyer, because it's not necessarily going to be your dream home or your forever home.
Right.
But I still ultimately think that you should really love whatever place, or at least have plans to love the place.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, you want to love where you live, right? Because it's going to help you with, obviously being happier, staying there long term,
Right.
Things like that for sure. Okay, cool. That's one of the biggest mistakes there. Definitely. Yeah, I could definitely see that too. Let's see. What other questions do you have for, or things that you want to bring up specifically when it comes to, maybe somebody going out there and purchasing, a piece of real estate?
I don't know. Honestly, it's
Okay.
it's tough. I mean, because everyone's situation is different.
Sure.
So everyone has a different idea of what they plan on doing with the property.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like there's people who go out there and they buy things to fix up. There's some people who are out there that are first-time home buyers. There's some people who've done it a million times, or they're trying to move from other states to avoid the property taxes.
Sure.
So it's like everyone's situation is different, and it's really hard to give a direct answer.
Yeah. No,
just
definitely.
because there are so many scenarios in real estate. This is a good fit for this person. This is not going to work for this person.
Right.
So
Well,
it's really tough.
And that's what I think too. Like, there's a lot of gurus out there that give like blanketed real estate advice, right?
Mhm.
And it's so hard to give blanketed real estate advice when everyone's situation is a
And
little
every
bit
market is different.
100%.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's really tough to say, this one's good, or this type of thing is good, but that may be good in this market. That's not good in this market.
Right. No, exactly. Well, and here's the one thing I'll bring up too, right? So, I know that you and I had talked about this. I think like last week or something like that. And it's definitely something I want to bring up for potential first-time homebuyers, right? Personally, I'm seeing a lot of millennials and Gen Z start getting into the home purchasing market, right? As they're coming into the market, a lot of the challenges that they have is affordability with the payment, right? But also the ability to bring the money that is required to the closing table,
Mhm.
right? So that's usually where most of my clients have challenges is monthly payment affordability, what they can actually put down, right?
And that's the thing is I see that a lot as well. But I feel for them, though, in a way, because let's say they're renting, right? And they're renting and they're spending $1,400 a month on rent, right? They're looking to buy a house where their mortgage is $1,100 or $1,200, so they know that they could afford that monthly payment,
Right.
and they're confused. Why can't I get approved if I'm paying $1,400 now and making steady payments?
Right.
But it's the issues that come into play with credit history and down payment, and those are the things. And they get confused, like, well, if I can afford this, how can I not buy this house?
Right. Of course. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that like that aside too, right? Like the two products that I definitely want to highlight with you, because I think they're two things that are like industry changers, right? For first-time home buyers, that's definitely going to help out you and your clients. Is first we'll talk about the fact that Fannie Mae, which for someone who doesn't know what Fannie Mae is, they're an agency, right? So the government they're not government affiliated, but the government like owns them right now, right? Because of everything that happened like back in the day and stuff with the housing crash and all that jazz. So essentially, Fannie Mae, anytime that somebody takes out a mortgage and it's called a conventional loan, right? It's going to be sold to either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac as the agency that actually secures that loan. So what that means is, if the client defaults on that mortgage payment for a conventional loan, one of those two entities is going to pay out the bank that has that money against that house, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have mortgage insurance, or you have to put down like 20%, right? So Fannie Mae came out and changed their guidelines on down payment requirements for multifamily properties. What that means is you used to, for like a 3-unit, for example, so that would be 3 different properties on one parcel, right? So think of like a 3 flat, like in the city, right?
Mhm.
That's the most common thing. So you'd have 3 different homes all together in like attached to each other, and it's on one parcel. So one piece of land that's being sold. You used to have to put down 25% of the home's value. So let's say it was, $1 million, right? That'd be $250,000 you'd have to come out to closing with just for the down payment. You still have closing costs and everything else on top of that. To purchase a 3-unit as your primary residence. So you would live in one and you rent out the other 2, right? That's a really good way as a first-time homebuyer to make additional money and to have that payment lowered, because you can also use that rental income to help qualify for the property too, right? So Fannie Mae came out and said, hey, now instead of putting down 25%, you only have to put down 5%, which again, in that scenario on a $1 million place is $50,000, right? So, you can do the math at any price point, right? Because most of these places aren't worth $1 million right now.
Yeah.
But that's really, enticing for a first-time home buyer to pick up a piece of real estate that they can immediately start making money off of right now today, getting cash flow and reducing what they have to bring to the table for their monthly payment, right? They can use that income to help qualify for the property with them, and they have to put down significantly less than what they would have previously.
And that's the thing, though. I mean, if it's a 3-unit, not only are they giving, more than likely they're getting their entire mortgage paid for at that point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah, if you have two different rental incomes
two
coming
different,
in.
So you're making money almost by living in your house, in your property. Like you can't beat that.
No, not at all.
I mean, how many people wish? I mean, could you imagine you just living in your house and you're getting paid to live in your house?
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's just like the ideology of that is it's really insane. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too. So, and the nice thing about that is you only have to live there for a year, right? So when you purchase that, you're signing a promissory note to live there for a year. That's what your mortgage is. But after that, you can move and it doesn't matter at that point.
And then guess what?
You're holding the mic a little closer.
There's one more. Okay. And then once you move out, that's just one more stream of income because then you start renting that one out.
Exactly.
So it's really just an awesome concept.
Oh, it's great. And then what you can also do too, if you don't have a 3-unit near you that you want to purchase, right? You can still purchase a place and rent out the rooms, right? And so if you have some friends or maybe a girlfriend or a boyfriend that's living with you, like you can charge them rent, right? I know a lot of clients that are doing that too to help make that a little bit more affordable, right? Now, the second product I want to talk about as well with you is, alternatives for down payments, right? So there's obviously a bunch of different like down payment assistance programs. So for somebody who doesn't know what that is, it would simply be a grant or an additional loan that's being given to you at closing to help offset your down payment and your closing costs. So the goal of that would be to reduce the amount of money you have to bring to closing, right? So a lot of those programs are like either state or local grants for like different cities, right? And so a lot of those have different features on there that make it potentially more expensive over time, right? Which we won't go into all the details on that right now, but there are different things. You just want to look at the full picture with your loan officer and your realtor when you're getting qualified for that, right? But one of the really good alternatives would be, with a conventional loan as a first-time home buyer, you can put down as little as 3%. The nice thing about that is if you make under the median income for your area, which is typically around $75,000, then you can qualify for 3% down with a reduced mortgage insurance, which would be that cost to secure your loan since you aren't putting down 20%, and a reduced interest rate based on the market, right? Obviously, reduced interest rate now is probably still like 7.5%. But, if the market's at 8 and you're getting at 7.5, it's not so bad, right? So you can do all of that, but additionally, we can broker that loan and actually close that loan where instead of you putting down 3%, you still have the 3% equity in your home, so you still owe 3% less than what it's worth at the time that you close on it. But we as the lender are giving them 2% of the 3%, so the client only has to come to closing with 1%. And then we're also paying off that mortgage insurance. There's no monthly mortgage insurance at all. It's all paid at closing, right? And it's good for the length of that loan. And then there's other things too that the client can use between seller credits and lender credits to help get them a lower down payment, right? So there's a ton of options there for first-time home buyers that are coming through that might think that they can't qualify in their given situation. Do you see that a lot with people that are maybe nervous about applying or seeing what's out there because they're concerned about the wrong things, maybe?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's a program that I haven't had any clients actually use yet.
Yeah.
I know it's fairly new, but I actually haven't came across it at all yet.
Sure.
I will say, though, it probably is very beneficial for the people who do use it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it just takes people who, they're not off by much, but they're off,
Right.
It just makes it possible for them.
Right.
And I think that's awesome because when people think about buying houses nowadays, like the public, they think, the interest rates are high. I got to bring $1 million to closing. You know what I mean? But these type of scenarios allow people to purchase real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of people have misconceptions on what they bring down, right? Like typically for our clients, I mean, you're bringing about 10, maybe 15K at most, right? $10,000 to close, right? If you use that 1% program and you get some seller credits, you're probably closer to 4 or 5. I mean, most people that are looking at that, they might have $4,000 or $5,000, right? Or they could get a gift from mom and dad for $4,000 or $5,000. Like, it's super easy to do a lot of that stuff.
And that's something that I've been trying to. That's something that I've been trying to, really recommend with my clients. I guess you could say a lot more is, the closing cost credits. I think those are underutilized, honestly. Yeah. Understanding that, yes, sometimes if we need a certain amount of, closing cost credits on a deal, maybe offering a little bit over the list price, but with, X amount of closing costs, kind of balances it out for the seller and for the buyer and the seller. Yeah. And I think that's something that, it could be very beneficial depending on the situation for the buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. Awesome. Well, we just hit our 30 minutes here. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. I mean, thanks for having me. This is the first time for something like this, but absolutely. I will say it's pretty fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to have you back. We'll make it happen. I'll reach out to you. We'll get it on there.
Yeah.
And you did great. First time. I love it.
I appreciate it.
So, let's rock and roll.